Welcome back everyone to the Hello World Guide. This is another episode of the Raycaster game in C++ series, and in this video we are going to finalize a multi-layered map and also multi-layer map editing and the variable floors and ceiling in our engine. So to begin, I'm going to go ahead and move into our project directory, and earlier on we had three textures. One was the sky texture, one was the floor texture, and one was a wall texture. Now in the previous videos we changed our wall texture to be a wall texture array, our actual texture atlas to allow multiple textures. Now we have removed the floor textures, and instead we have got a single texture.png containing both the wall and the floor texture, since it's practically the same, and we can just use a similar index based method to access the floor textures. Now in order to get our program ready to deal with this change, I have go ahead and first of all done some naming changes. First of all, in resources.h, you can see that we have got our renamed my wall textures to just textures, and we have also got a new variable here, which is an SF image called texture image. Now what is the purpose of this? If I open up resources.cpp, you can see that we get this here as well. The reason is that for floor we need to access the image, while for walls we need to access the texture, so we just store both. So what we do in here is that we load the actual image. We don't load the texture from the file, instead we load the image from the file, and then we set our textures and initialize it from that image. We load the texture from the image. That way we only load the file once, but then we can use the image to create the texture as well. And of course you need to make sure you rename this in all places. So let me open up render.h now, and if I go down here, you can see that we get our we don't no longer have a floor image here. And if I open up render.cpp, we have modified a bunch of things. First of all, of course, in the init message we are no longer loading anything. We are just loading the sky texture right now, and we are initializing and setting the texture of our floor buffer. And now if I move down, we have got our draw 3D view function, and in here are the major changes. So you can see that we are dealing with our floor pixels array and initializing it, everything. And inside here, the most important change is that now instead of using the floor textures, we are using resources texture image dot get size, and we are using y here because the y represents the actual size of an individual texture. And now after setting our texture coordinates, this after setting our texture coordinates, we create a new variable called text. We just call it text, you can call it whatever you like, and we use this by getting our map cell in our current floor position. So our current floor position is stored in floor.x and floor.y. We access our map at that position by converting this to an integer implicitly, and we tell it to get the floor layer, and it will give us the correct value for that layer, or 0 if none exists. Now we create an SF color called color, and if our texture is 0, we initialize this color to be basically a grayish color, just like we show in the map, so that by default, if there is no floor present, then there would be gray floor. And if that's not the case, then we go ahead and set our color to be resources textured image.get pixel, and we set our basically for accessing the actual pixel. Now instead of just using our texture coordinates .x and y, we also take our texture, subtract 1 from it, because 0 represents no texture, subtract 1 from it, and then we multiply that by texture size and use that as an offset to our texture coordinates. So that gives us the correct floor pixel, and then we just set our floor pixels to that color.rgb and a. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the changing in our renderer. So if I open up the editor.h right now here is the second main change, not in editor.h, actually editor.cpp. So if I open this up, you can see that in here the most important change is that if I go down here, we are now having another widget inside of our editor window. So if I go down here, we have got our editing options window, and in here we have got this new code here. Now this allows us to choose between our different layers, and if you remember in the last video, we already implemented the actual layer based system, so the editing is the only thing we needed to change. So first of all, we have got an imgui text layer here, and then we have got first of all, let me open a map.h, and in here we have got another const expression which represents all of the layer names. To access, in the UI, we are going to store them as a simple C strings, an array of C strings with number of layers elements, so basically walls, floor, and ceiling in that order. And in editor.cpp, we use imgui begin combo to display a drop down box. Now this is the id of the combo, which is just hashtag layer to prevent this id from being displayed. And then for the actual value that is displayed within the actual box, before we open up the drop down, we choose map layer names and we provide it with our current layer. The reason we do it this way is because of course we want our map to be the actual current layer should be displayed before the user selects the drop down menu. And if the user does select the drop down menu, of course in the end we need to call imgui end combo, and in here we run a for loop going over all of the layers and then using an imgui selectable. Now this is a special widget that we can use to select different items. It takes the first argument it takes is the actual display value, which is going to be our layer name, our current layer name, and the second is whether this particular selectable is selected or not. Because imgui does not maintain any state, we need to maintain the state ourselves, and we just say if the index value is equal to the current layer, then that means this layer is selected. Now this returns true if the user actually clicks on this. So if the user clicks on any selectable, then we set our current layer to that index value, so that our current layer is set to the correct layer. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole of the editing functionality. Now another problem, a bit of a bug I had in map.cpp was that if I go down here, you can see that we are using our set map cell here. I kind of reversed in the last video. I showed the layer being after the value. The value was here and the layer was there, like this one. But that actually is wrong because it causes our value to be interpreted as the layer and the actual layer to be interpreted as the value. So that is completely wrong. We need to make sure we reverse the order, just like they are in map.a. So that was a small oversight on my part. Anyways, this is pretty much all the changes we need to do, and as you can see, it was very simple to add multiple floors to our scene. So currently you can see we get gray as a floor, and if I open up a map, for example test.map, I still get gray as a floor, and our floor, as you can see, is completely gray. However, I can go here and I can go ahead and move my text editing options to a side. I can go under layer and I can select the floor layer. Now currently you can see nothing is being displayed, so we are going to go ahead and change the texture number to for example this texture, the one we were using for our floor, and we can just use it to draw the whole scene. So yeah, you can just paint the whole scene with this. So you can see I have gone ahead and fixed up my whole map to be this texture, and if I go in here right now, we get the same texture back. And just to show you that the actual multiple textures thing is still working, I'm gonna like go here. Let me switch to the walls layer, and in here you can see we have got these blocks. I'm going to go ahead and change these blocks to be basically be completely wooden. So we are going to go ahead and implement a wooden thing here, like a wooden wall, and then in the floor we are going to in the floor I'm gonna change this to be wooden as well. So like this, I'm gonna change the whole floor around this to be wooden. So if I go here, I have actually implemented an extra, I think. Yeah, you can see that it's a bit extra, and yeah, we are gonna go ahead and remove this one, and I'm gonna change this back to the default floor, and then I'm going to go under walls, and I'm gonna go ahead and erase these two walls, and yeah, you can see we get a small wooden room inside of here. So yeah, that's working for our floor. However, there is still no ceiling anywhere in our engine. So now it's time to implement that. So implementing the ceiling drawing is relatively simple. We are going to just go ahead and first of all I'm gonna rename our floor buffer and floor buffer sprite to screen buffer and screen buffer sprite, because it's representing the whole screen now. And similarly we just change it everywhere, and in here we change our floor pixels to screen pixels instead. And here comes the interesting part. So in here we get our, instead of just having a single variable called text and a single color, we now have separate colors for the floor and ceiling and separate textures as well. And of course we use different layer accesses to get those, but we can do that in a single floor, single loop, since we don't need to cast the rays twice. We can just use them once and draw 2 pixels in each frame. So we set our floor color here correctly, and the only thing we changed for the ceiling color is that when setting the ceiling color, we if the ceiling texture is 0, we set it to be transparent instead of gray. That way it makes sure that our sky is displayed if there is no ceiling. So we just set it to be transparent, and in the end we set our screen pixels to we just set them for the floor value just like we were doing them earlier. However, for the ceiling values we need to take our y and subtract that from screen height and subtract 1 from that as well, and this gives us the this will basically provide us with a symmetrical ceiling as well, and we just do that within a single iteration, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That should make it work correctly. So let's go ahead and run this make here, and you can see we get this right now, and I've already edited my map. And by the way, there is another small problem, which was that in our map.cpp, you can see when we were loading and saving, we had a little bit of a bug where instead of multiplying this by num layers, I had the bracket, instead of being here it was here, so it was multiplying the actual value by the num layers and getting the size of that, which was the same as the value of a single grid cell, so the floors and ceiling were not being saved. But with this method you need to make sure that this parentheses are in the correct places. These parentheses, if they are not in the correct places, then yeah, it will cause problems. So yeah, once you have fixed that, I also added a couple of utility methods. So there was this I have added a new function here, fill, which allows us to fill a particular layer of a map with the same value. So if I go here, you can see just we check if the layer is within bounds, and then we go over each column and each cell and we set that to the value. This allows us to like easily fill the map with a particular floor. So in editor.cpp like this, we just use this to do that. So we have got two more functions, two more not functions, buttons here. One is fill, which just fills it with the current texture, and one is clear, which fills the whole layer with 0. So yeah, those are two functions. And now I'm going to go ahead and run make, and if I open this up, we have got currently of course empty, and I can go ahead and open up my test.map, and in here you can see we have got our floor and everything just like we had earlier, but now for the floors we are currently completely filled with this. I kind of lost my progress on that wooden floor thing, but still we have got our floor here, and I can go under my ceiling, and you can see we have got this ceiling here. So there is no ceiling in the whole map, but on this corner there is a little bit of ceiling. So in the room that you start in, there is this mossy ceiling, and I can of course go ahead and modify the floor of this room as well. Let's just change that to a different thing. So let's use this one. So let's change that like this. Yeah, so we are going to change the floor as well, and you can see that the ceiling is changed as well, and on every other place there is literally no ceiling, so no ceiling exists. I'm also going to change the wall design, and of course you can modify your maps just like you want to. You can just do whatever you like, and yeah, this is quite a nice editor right now. So if I press escape, you can see that in this room we have got these wall textures, we have got a floor texture, and we have got a ceiling as well. And if I go out, then we are getting in the open space, and we don't actually have a ceiling anymore. Of course we do have the floor still, but the floor changes between this room and the outer room. And of course I can save that, and the progress remains. So if I go here and run make again, and then I open this up again, so open up test.map, you can see we still get all of our progress back. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it for this video, and in this video we have got our floor and texture editing completely working. There are still a couple of minor things that we need to address in this Raycaster before we can move on to adding some game-like functionality to this. For example, collision checking, and perhaps even sprites with moving enemies, and a lot of other stuff. So tell me your thoughts about that in the comments. And for now we are gonna just end this video here, and I'll see you in the next one, in which we'll first of all make our editor a bit better. So stay tuned for that. Make sure to like and subscribe as well, and share this video with other people.